Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. Today we're going to be diving into a Texas whiskey. I've had a number of different whiskeys out of Texas. You know, Balcones is there. I've had plenty of their stuff. I've had a lot of, Dixon's 2XO products. But that one doesn't really count because as far as I know, he's just sourcing whiskey. He's not actually doing distillation there in Texas. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. But the problem that distillers in Texas face is that the climate is just not really all that conducive to mature aged whiskey. Right? It's just so stinking hot that a lot of times your whiskey is going to be just jumping straight into that barrel, getting up all that stuff out of the barrel and coming back into the open space. And so it's going to get syrupy really fast because of how many times it's making that trip in and out of the wood. And you don't want to let it sit for too long because if you do, it's going to end up really gross, like thick, syrupy, astringent, bitter. So they have to pull it out of the barrel before it gets to that point. So you don't tend to get like really nice mature barrel funk notes on these Texas whiskeys. But I'm going to be giving one a shot today from Ironroot Republic. This is the Harbinger. It's 115 proof, 2.5-year-old bourbon out of Denison, Texas. And 2.5 years old. Why? Well, because they can't keep it in there much longer. That's about it. So we're going to see if they're able to get some good flavors on this whiskey. This was sent to me by a resident in Texas who said, hey, I know Texas whiskey gets a bad rep. This one's actually pretty good. Now, we're going to find out if he's telling the truth or not. There we go. Get that poured. Now, I have never had anything from Ironroot, so I don't even know what to expect. I don't know what their flagship profiles are like. I don't know what their whole mantra is, their approach, none of it. The next logical thing to do is go to their website and click on the thing that says Our Story. Sounds like it's two brothers. One of them just got a law degree. One of them was a biomedical engineer, and they decided to pursue distilling. I can't help but feel like y'all were set up for success already, gentlemen. But kudos for following your heart. They traveled around the country and did internships under other distillers in the industry. And then they hired their mom. I love it. They mash, ferment, distill, and age, and bottle all on site, all in-house, all local corn too. Which I always appreciate when distilleries do that instead of sourcing. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with sourcing or contract distilling, but I feel like you get a much more meaningful connection with the distillery when you know that they are sourcing their ingredients from their local region, that they are paying tribute to their communities, that they do all of the work in-house instead of outsourcing it. I just feel like I have a deeper connection with distilleries that do that. You know what I mean? So here we go. I have not looked up anything about this specifically on the website, but I do know that this is called the Harbinger. It's 115 proof. Part of me is I'm going to assume that this is probably not their flagship core release. Maybe it's part of their core releases, but not. Most people have like a $30 bourbon or something like that as their standard product. This is 115 proof. Here, I'll look it up. I'll see what the price is on it. Oh, well, I'm wrong. This is their flagship bourbon. This is their flagship bourbon, but it's a $70 bottle. They have cheaper bottles. They got like a 100 proofer. They got a 90 proofer. Then they got your traditional, gin, vodka, brandy, all that stuff too. Moonshine. But we'll see how the Harbinger is. The nose already reminds me a bit of Balcones. It's a bourbon, but I get some like maltiness, biscuits, bitter chocolate on the nose. A little bit of a fruitiness on that too. Kind of thick, kind of jammy. Yeah, not a bad nose at all. Like I think a chocolate covered dried fruits that are sort of like, they're kind of chewy on the inside, chocolate on the outside. Like a dehydrated orange covered in chocolate, something like that. Let's try it. Yeah, it certainly does have a fruitiness to it. Makes me think of trail mix with the dried fruits in it. I get a little bit of like a Demerara sugar from the tail end of that palate too, right before the finish. Never had Demerara sugar. You give it a try. You make syrups out of it for cocktails. It's really great in an old fashioned instead of just your standard white sugar cane, sugar syrups. Got that deeper molassesy kind of a note to it, like Demerara has. The tail end of the palate into the finish is the best part of this sip. Right on the palate, I get this dry astringency on the sides of my tongue, and they kind of override a lot of the flavor, only momentarily. Once that subsides and we get to the tail end of the palate and into the finish, that goes away. And on the finish as it lingers, I think of like coffee grounds as well. The one thing I feel like I need to call attention to is the grains that they choose to use in this. Not your standard yellow dent corn. There is some yellow dent in there, but it's predominantly purple corn, bloody butcher corn, and flint corn, and a little bit of rye as well. Yeah, that nose, as I go back in on it, think of like raisins, those, like I said, dry, chewy fruits, front and center on it. That astringent oak for sure, demerara sugar, trail mix, a little bit of coffee grounds on the finish. All right, well, we got to talk about how good it is, like giving it a score. I'm definitely going to say that it's interesting. And I think that that has a lot to do with not only the climate, location, but also the grains that they choose to use. That purple corn, bloody butcher corn, not notes that you're really well accustomed to, probably. So in that regard, I applaud their creativity. But is it good? Well, I'll say this. It certainly isn't bad. There's nothing in here that I taste it and I think, wow, that's terrible. You know what I mean? If they could find a way to dial back that astringency that I'm assuming is coming from the combination of the barrel and the heat, you know, the climate and the barrel. That's the biggest hurdle I think Texas distillers have to face. It's got a really interesting profile. I don't dislike anything about it really other than that astringency. The thing that's also a bit of a point of contention is that $70 price point is pretty high. And so for a lot of people, that's going to be a tough ask, $70, especially when you think of what you're going up against. I mean, MSRP for Elmer T. Lee, what, like 50 bucks? And people go nuts over that bottle. They'll pay $300 for it, which is weird to me, but they will. MSRP for 1792 full proof, 50 bucks. Eagle Rare 10 year, 30 bucks. This is 2.5 years old and $70. So you're going to be paying a premium for the fact that this is, you know, a small distillery. It's a craft distillery with an interesting location, with an interesting mash bill. So you're paying for interesting, I think. And if you're comfortable with that, then I think this is actually a pretty decent whiskey. If you're comfortable losing some money on the premium you're going to pay for interesting. So if I'm going to give this a score per my scale, I'm going to give it a 6.4. 6.4. Certainly not bad. It's good. I'd love to see them try to find some creative ways to dial back the astringency effect that you get off the heat interacting with the barrel. You can learn to mute that, tame that a little bit. I think there's actually some really good notes in there that once they come forward are really compelling. Thank you so much, Mr. Shockley, for sending that sample in. So maybe we keep our eye on this distillery and see what their journey looks like as they continue to grow and develop. Maybe we'll get some really good stuff out of them in the future. Ironroot Republic. Thanks so much for watching the video. Let me know if there's any Texas whiskeys you've had that have seriously impressed you. Thanks once again to all my Patreon supporters. You guys are rock stars. We've had a lot of new supporters there on the Patreon of late, so I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That helps to fund the barrels and bottles that I get to try here on the channel. So I really appreciate the support. Here's my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. Hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.